What's going on, YouTube? Here is my PS4 and 720 video. Now, before I get started, just let me make something clear. This video is going to be 99% of it, 99.9% of it is going to be my opinions, my views, because both of these consoles, they haven't been announced. Nothing at all has been confirmed about them. So all I can do is speculate. All I can do is predict. All I can do is say what I think Sony and Microsoft are going to do with their systems, and all I can say is what I want to see them do. So most of this video is just going to be predictions, speculations. What I want to see them do. So it's just going to be my opinions, my views. So don't get butthurt. And although I said that, some of you are still going to get butthurt. So oh well, whatever. But anyways, let's get started. Let's start with the PS4. Now, like I mentioned in my last video, the graphical gap between the PS2 and the PS3, don't expect that same gap with the PS3 and the PS4. If you're expecting that, I promise you, I assure you, you are going to be sorely disappointed. Some people out there expecting the PS4 to, use like 5-cell processors, and it's going to have 1,000 gigs of RAM and 2 GPUs in it. Don't expect that. If you're expecting, graphics better than real life, in the PS4, don't. Because I promise you, that's not happening. You're going to be disappointed. I promise you that. I assure you that. Architecture-wise, inside the PS4, what it's going to use. Not that many rumors have been, thrown around about it, but a rumor, I did see one rumor about it talking about that it's going to drop the cell. It's going to use a more, traditional, some more traditional, powered PC processor or something like that. I pretty much think that's false. Actually, I think Sony is going to stick with the cell. They're going to use a much more, of course, they're going to use a more powerful cell, next generation console, but they're going to use a more powerful cell that is easier to develop for. I think that's what they're going to focus on. They're going to keep the cell because it's a great processor. It's just, it's just hard for developers to develop on. So they're just going to make a stronger cell that's easier to develop for. Of course, they're going to stick with Blu-ray. They're going to put in a Blu-ray drive that reads faster than what's in the PS3, because Sony's not going to make the same mistake twice. They're not going to give us a system that has slow loading times, and for some of the games they're going to require these mandatory installs and crap like that. Sony's not going to do that again. They're not that stupid. A lot of people say Sony's going to use a new disc format because of their Sony system. They've used a different disc format, CD PS1, DVD PS2, Blu-ray PS3. You're halfway right. You're half wrong. You're half right. Because currently there's nothing out there better than a Blu-ray disc, but there are better Blu-ray discs than what's out now. There's 50 dual layered Blu-ray discs, but there's currently 100 gigabyte Blu-ray discs that actually exist. So what Sony's going to do is put in this Blu-ray drive that will support those 100 gigabyte Blu-ray discs. I know a lot of you will say, what's the point of that? That's pointless. They don't need 100 gigs. Well, you got people like Hideo Kojima, who like to make their game file sizes, a 3,000 gigs. So, some developers will actually use that extra space. And while it may not be the third-party developers, I could definitely see first-party, studios using some of that space. Not all of it, but some. Some developers will use it and appreciate it. So, and, more space, it doesn't hurt. So there's really no point in complaining about it. Let's see. I know a lot of Sony fans are going to disagree with me on this, but I am tired of this controller. I'm tired of it. Think about it, guys. We've been playing with this controller for 3 console generations. It is time for something different. We've been playing on this same controller for 3 decades. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad controller. It's completely functional. It wouldn't bother me as much, but the main problem is, like I said, we've been playing with it for over a decade, but it's a small controller, and I have big hands, so it's just uncomfortable for me to hold, for long periods of time. I deal with it, whatever, because I want to play the game, but I want a new controller. We've been using these for over a decade. It's time to move on to something different. I've always been a fan of the D-pad because you guys know you guys who have played fighters on Nintendo systems, you guys know if those D-pads are sharp and they bruise your freaking thumb. For those of you who, for some strange reason, played fighters on the 360, you guys know the D-pad flat out doesn't work. Period. So you know, I've always liked the D-pad. So you know, keep the button layout, keep the same buttons, just give us a different shaped controller. Like if I see a DualShock 4, I will immediately get a headache. Swear to God. Um, Speaking of bringing something new, hopefully they give us a new menu system. You know, a new operating system. Because you know nothing's wrong with the XMB. I just think Sony could do something much cooler. I'm glad that they dropped the XMB with the Vita because you know we had it with the PS2. Not PS2. We had it with the PSP. We had it with the PS3. You know we don't need the XMB a third time. They should give us something new, and I think they will. You know I think they will give us something new, because the fact that you know they didn't include it in the Vita, you know, indicates that you know they want a new little menu system going on. Online wise. You know, honestly, I'm gonna say this. I don't know why. It's just a hunch, but I don't see Sony focusing on online next generation. I think they will try to get cross game chat on the PS4. They'll find a way around because I think doesn't Microsoft like own the patent to like the technology used for cross game chat in consoles or something like that. Something like that. But I'm sure Sony will find some way to get around it or whatever. So you know, I think they will do cross game chat. I think they will get PSN up to the level that the 360, not the 360, Xbox Live is currently at. But I don't think they're going to try very hard to go beyond that. Like I said, I'm not saying they're not going to improve on it. I just said I don't think they're going to focus on you know trying to beat out Xbox Live. You see what I'm saying? I don't think they're going to focus on that. I think their focus and you know effort is going to be you know elsewhere. Like you know Vita PS4 connectivity and you know IPs, you know stuff like that. I think that's what the focus is going to be. Yeah, PS4 and Vita, you know connectivity. Of course, that's going to be included. A lot of people would like to say, you know, oh, the PS4 and the Vita are going to be the same thing as Wii U. No, not really, because when it comes to streaming your game to the Vita, that's going to be a developer choice. That's going to be a software thing. That's going to be up to the actual game. That's where on the Wii U, any game you play on it will be streamable because that's a console feature, not a game feature. That's a console feature. You see what I'm saying? But anyways, what was I about to say? I lost track. Oh yeah, game wise, on the game front, I'm pretty sure Sony is once again going to bring out a bunch of new IPs, but call me crazy. I want Sony to do the exact opposite. I want Sony to go back and bring old IPs to the PS4. And I know some of you are going to be like, oh, Shokio, what the heck? You're crazy. You blasphemy. Oh, my God. But think about it, guys. The main problem Sony has had this generation was its lack of appeal in games to, you know, the general public, you know, the masses. You know, a typical consumer, he's not going to go down the aisle and be like, you know, not necessarily a typical consumer, but, you know, a gamer in general. You know, somebody who games on the 360, somebody who games on the, you know, on Nintendo system. Somebody who isn't necessarily a Sony fan. When they walk down the aisle, they're not going to go, oh, you know, Mod Nation Racers on the Vita. Oh, my God. You know, they're not doing that. They're not flipping out for these new IPs. But imagine if Sony brought back Fighting Force. Imagine an HD Fighting Force on the PS4. And this gamer, he's walking down the aisle. Whoa, they brought Fighting Force back. Oh my God, holy shit. You know, they would do that because they recognize that. You see what I'm saying? Imagine if Sony kept Crash Bandicoot, developed by Naughty Dog. Imagine if they kept Spyro. And imagine if they've had them going this whole time they had PS3 games. You see what I'm saying? That would have helped Sony out a lot on the sales front this generation because people would have recognized those franchises. And those franchises' fan bases would have grown immensely since then because that was like 10 years ago. You see what I mean? I think it was last year they confirmed Legend Dragoon's in development. That's right there. I mean, that's it right there. That's what I want them to do. Go back to the PS1 classics, give them sequels. That's what I want to see from Sony next generation. Moving on to the 720. No, I'm not gonna call it 720. I'm gonna call it the NextBox. It's stupid to just take 360 and multiply it by 2. So the NextBox. I'm not trying to bash Microsoft or anything, but I really don't expect them. I really don't see them caring much, you know, appealing to the hardcore. I don't think that's what their focus is gonna be. You know, they're in this whole casual craze right now. They are banking on Connect. So I really don't see them, caring about the hardcore too much. I know a lot of you are gonna say, well, Shokio, what about the Wii? What happened to the Wii? Um, we still got first party Nintendo games, on the Wii. We still got Donkey Kong. We got three Metroid games. We got Metroid Prime 3, Metroid Prime Corruption, Metroid, Metroid Other M. We got our Mario games. We got our Zelda games. We got our Kirby games. So while a lot of you may say, Nintendo just focused on the casual, this generation, we still got just as many, hardcore first party Nintendo titles as we did any other previous generation. You see what I mean? So no, it's not the same thing. So I just don't see. And another thing is, Microsoft is a greedy corporation. I think we can all agree on that. See, that's the thing. Microsoft is a lot more greedier than Nintendo. So if they're banking on all this casual money, I can't see them breaking away from that because they're greedy. They love money. They want money. They want money at all costs. That's why we pay for Xbox Live. See what I'm saying? So I really don't see them focusing on the hardcore too much. I see them making a system that is either on par or a little bit stronger than the Wii U. I expect it to be a little bit stronger since it will be coming out, a year. I was about to say a week, but I stopped and said a Wii. It's coming out a year after the Wii U. So I expect it to be stronger since it's coming out, a year later. But I expect them to just, make that system a little stronger than the Wii U and throw in a Kinect 2.0. I think the Kinect 2.0 is going to be what Microsoft is all about next generation. So I mean, it's going to be centered around Kinect and what Kinect is doing currently right now on the 360 and on Xbox Live. You looking at the 360 right now, like look at it, guys. You see, they have this whole, Xbox search It Man. And if you guys have not seen It Man, you have not started living yet. You have not. That is the best movie of all time. But Xbox play movie, Xbox pause movie. Things like that. That's what Microsoft is going to focus on right there. And that's why I think Microsoft is going to be Nintendo's competition next generation. Because of course, the Wii U pad is going to appeal to, the general market, the masses. But, things like that, things like the Kinect is doing right now, if Microsoft expands on that, which they definitely will do, that's going to give Nintendo some competition. Because the casuals are going to look at the Wii U, they're going to say, oh, that's awesome, it's like a tablet. And then they're going to look at Kinect and they're going, oh, voice commands and stuff. And they're going, they're going to buy both of them. So Microsoft is going to be Nintendo's biggest competition next generation. Unless Sony pulls out something completely new and innovative, which I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I don't want it. No, I'm not going to go there. But I'm sure a lot of you knew where I was about to get at. But yeah, that's what I expect Microsoft to be doing. They're going to focus on just improving on Xbox Live, improving on the actual capabilities, of the system. What can the NextBox do? That's what they're going to focus on. They're going to be focused on, making sure that it's going to be the, to get system. Like you got to have it. Every household, around the world has to have an Xbox in their family room because it just does so much. I think that's what Microsoft's goal is going to be would be with on the 720. Now, like I said, I can't talk much about these two systems. I could just speculate on what I think they're going to do because nothing has been confirmed. But there was a rumor recently released that the 720 and the PS3 are going to be announced at E3 2012. I firmly believe that the 720 is going to be announced. I don't believe the PS3 will. The PS4, excuse me. I think the PS4 will be hinted at. I think they will be talked about, but I don't think it will be announced. I think those be like, oh, and before we end the conference, we just want to assure you that the next PlayStation experience is under development. Something like that. But I don't expect them to announce the actual system. Microsoft, I do. Because they don't want Nintendo being them at their own game, being the competition to the market a year earlier. So they're going to try to get the 720 out as fast as possible. So I definitely think we will see the 720 at E3. Like I said, PS4, not so much. I think I think Sony's conference is going to be. This ain't an E3 predictions video. I'm talking about PS4 and 720. Yeah, I think the PS4 is going to be at E3 2013. And will probably be released at E3 2013. Some of you may disagree with that, but think about it, guys. Just last year, Sony requested engineers for the PS4. So they really haven't even started on it, hardware wise. They probably have, finalized plans for it, they probably have the, general idea of what they want to do, but they actually haven't started creating the PS4. So I think the PS4 might actually, you know, we might actually see a late 2013 release or even a 2014 release. I'm stretching it a little bit there, but maybe, just maybe. But I'm pretty sure Sony is going to, kick it into high gear, so they get it, in, so Microsoft doesn't get a huge leap over them, and Nintendo doesn't. Nintendo is already going to get a leap over them, that's confirmed, because the Wii U is coming out 2012. PS4 is not even near completion, so the Wii U is definitely going to have a jump. 720, we don't know yet. The 720 could be released this year. Who knows? If Microsoft has been rushing it like they did the 360, it could be, but I doubt it. So for the 360, I expect it could have like an early 2013 or a summer 2013 release. But either way, I definitely think the 720 is going to be released in 2013, and the PS4 will be announced at E3 2013. Don't know about its release date. Really can't say. But yeah, those are my predictions, views, speculations on the PS4 and 720. What I want to see. I said 720 NextBox. What I want to see in them. So leave your thoughts in the comment section. Look forward to my Wii U series of videos. See you guys later.